everyone is advised to buy their way to the finish line, right? To your point, buy your signatures. Buy the robocalls so that like even if you're not meeting them ever, like they feel like they're getting a phone call from you. Buy the digital ads, the TV ads, and like it's just people will do anything but talk to like actual people to get their trust and support, you know? And thankfully that has created a very big cultural difference between me and my opponent because, you know, like we're not necessarily splashing like the big dollars on all these things, but like what they don't recognize is like we're literally in every neighborhood every day now. And so like we're seeing people express genuine excitement and also, you know, like a bit of frustration at the status quo, which, you know, I'm not happy to say that benefits me. I always want us to have good representation, but I can't deny that it's boosted us in a way that I wasn't anticipating. So, yeah, I've loved the doors. I think a lot of times people kind of, you know, when you're talking about this in like marketing kind of standpoint and stuff, it's like the idea is you need to touch a voter like 5, 6, 7 times, right, before you get to the finish line. And for me, I've kind of always thought of like my own personal experiences as like a voter. And I'm like, have I ever got like a Facebook ad in the last couple of years that has made me think, oh, wow, all of a sudden, like, I'm going to vote for this person? Or like, have I seen a tweet that really like inspires me to change, you know, the way I vote or think about things? And the answer is firmly no, you know? Yeah. And what I do get inspired by, though, is like this kind of connection. Like if I'm talking to somebody, I'll remember that for the rest of my life. And, you know, we've always treated the door knock as the most important experience any voter can go through. And that's kind of the model we're committed to between now and the end of June.
Yeah, I think when you touch people in person, that you actually reduce the amount of contacts they need because they almost never get a live person. Yeah. Like I also know that people are often left with the last person that they spoke with and what that made them feel like. Forget the policy. You know it, when you approach people and you connect with them and they just like you, then the policy stuff actually doesn't matter as much. And they feel like there's somebody that's caring about them, that will listen to them. And then it doesn't matter if you agree on everything. And I just think that this mentality is would be so much more effective for people campaigning.
Yeah. And I think like you've hit a great point. And that's been my learning curve, honestly, throughout the campaign, because I very much love policy, right? Like, in the same way the gentleman before us I was talking, I'm an engineer, I love solutions. Right. The way I always think about politics is like, okay, like what are the things that can take us to a more equitable healthcare system, right? What are the things that can take us to a greener environment and economy? And those are very distinct policy ideas. But to your point, Jen, like people don't care about that, right? Like people don't vote with this, they vote with their hearts. And so what I learned very quickly is that people weren't, I think obviously in my district, people do resonate with the policy, but more effectively, when I told the story of who I am, what I've been through, kind of what my communities are going through, like that's when people see themselves in you, right? They see a part of them and what you're representing. And like, that matters way more, I think, than, I care about this idea versus that idea necessarily.
Yeah. No, I know for a fact that's what it is.
Yeah, and I think this, it's obviously, as you mentioned, policy is a huge part of this equation. And of course, if there is one specific policy that both Democrats and Republicans fail on miserably is affordable housing. It goes without saying that your particular district, Denver is one of the, I think, 5 or 6 most expensive places in the country to live now. Gentrification is completely off the chart. Of course, one of the biggest issues in Denver is obviously you've had a lot of people relocate from Silicon Valley. It has become one of those places where,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, big tech. Oh, listen.
Me too, you know?
Florida, you know, you've got the big tech industries that have hit Denver and Austin, but they are coming here to Miami. So if you think it's hard enough to live here in South Florida, you ain't seen nothing yet. So it's going to get even worse. But with that said, what has been sort of the trajectory as you've seen? Because looking at the lovely Congresswoman's bio, she does not have anything outside of the purview of the typical wedge issues that are focused on regarding the Democratic Party.
Like ours.
Pro-choice, LGBTQ.
We're nice to the trans folk.
Yeah.
And we support women's rights to choose. You're otherwise screwed, but we're good on those things.
I don't see anything regarding Medicare for all. I don't see anything regarding the living wage. I don't see anything regarding housing crisis. I don't see anything regarding the wars. I don't see anything regarding cost of living. Colorado is a very unique state in the sense that it is not an expensive state to live in if you're nowhere near the big cities. But if you are near the big cities, you might as well be in Los Angeles or San Francisco. There really is no difference at this point. And I can imagine that is a significant role that is being played in your campaign, is focusing on the fact that cost of living in the state of Colorado, particularly in Denver, is really bad, and your congresswoman definitely plays a role in that. If you could elaborate on that, we'd appreciate it.
Totally. I mean, you nailed the most important thing that I think and this isn't a Denver issue necessarily, right? Like, people all over the United States are feeling the full weight of the American economy right now. And Denverites, to your point, are not out of that equation. And so I read an article, I think it was top 7, top 5, but out of the biggest 50 cities population-wise in the United States of America, we're the 7th most expensive in terms of like what you need to be making in terms of a livable wage to succeed and live out here. And there are a number of things that are contributing to that, right? You've mentioned one of them, which is the fact that there are a lot of wealthy individuals who are looking at Colorado, who are looking at the environment out here as, wow, this is cool. I want to be out here. I love the state. I love the progress. But for me, I've always thought about poverty, economics. It's all about systems, right? And the systems that we have here in Colorado are incentivizing this type of behavior. So a couple things for people to know about. Colorado, in its constitution, is not allowed to implement rent control. Okay, so rent control is off the table. That is forbidden by our state constitution. Another important thing for people to think about, and I think we might have touched on this a little bit the last time we talked, it's the tax framework we have called TABOR, which essentially caps state tax revenue at a level that existed in the 90s. And the problem with that is our state has exploded in terms of population size since that time. So, of course, ideally, you want your state revenue to evolve with the population so that you can invest those public dollars, education, infrastructure, housing, and all those things. But we can't do that, right? So in the process, we've created a very predatory economy, predatory real estate economy in particular, right here in the Mile High City. And so whether it's the cost of housing, whether it's the cost of healthcare, education, people right now are struggling. And we've seen our homeless population quite literally double in the last year. And that's no secret. So when we're talking about kind of the difference of vision and frameworks that I have compared to my opponent, the first thing we lead with whenever we're talking to our voters, our communities, is sharing the story, right, Jen? And saying, look, we think it's important for our representation to live the struggles of their constituents. And unfortunately, like a lot of us right now, I'm being crushed by a lifetime of student debt. I can't afford to buy a home in the city that I want to live in. And the cost of childcare is something that is preventing our ability to begin our family, meaning me and my wife. And so that's the first thing I try to lead with. But then when it comes to the policy side of the equation, I think you hit the frustration that so many of us have right now, which is in a district like ours, that is D+57, that is progressive, that wants to see transformational progressive policies be championed, we don't have them. And I think that's due to the fact that my opponent has literally accepted millions and millions of dollars from what I would describe as the wrong corporations over the course of her career. And, for example, we lead with the Green New Deal, right? Environmental issues in Colorado are top of mind. We had the biggest fire in the history of our state in the winter of last year. 2 of our neighborhoods in Denver, my district, registered 2 of the most polluted zip codes in the United States. So there is a great need for a full commitment to the environment. But, my opponent hasn't signed a single piece of Green New Deal legislation. And I think that's due to the fact that XL Energy, which is one of the biggest oil and gas presences we have here in Colorado, have given her $50,000 over the course of her career, right? Like, that is by design. And then you look at the conversation of healthcare, right? This is also one of the biggest things and one of the most important things we need to be talking about, I think, in the context of Roe versus Wade, right? Like, first and foremost, healthcare is a human right, period. And I don't care what the politics are behind that. Like, that is my belief. And unfortunately, my opponent's biggest financiers, corporation-wise, are pharmaceutical companies and healthcare lobbyists, right? So by design, she cannot advocate for Medicare for all in the way that I think so many of us are looking for. And so these patterns of behavior are very troubling. They're what we highlight in terms of like our differences over the campaign trail. And, I think Colorado is really, or I should say the 1st Congressional District is ready to be a leading voice in the transformational policies we all care about.
Yeah, guys, his incumbent has been sitting there since 1997.
I was 8 when she was elected into office,
Right.
Yeah.
And by the way, Denver, that because of how it sits geographically, just so people understand, it's always had an issue with the potential to have smog. That's just something that's inherent in how it's up against the mountains, because I remember this was an issue, and they went through phases where they were so good about it, and it really did work, and it really cleaned it up, similar to what happened in LA. But when you live in that kind of environment, you have to be on top of that, because of the way that you should be on top of it anyway, but like you really have a tendency to get a smog and a brown cloud. Denver had a brown cloud. They were known for having brown cloud. And it's disgusting. Yeah. And you need to be on top of that, people. Like that's not, it's not acceptable. Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.